All right, what is up, folks? Welcome back to another episode of Lifting, Running, and Living with your favorite coaches, Kelly.
Hello.
Hello, and JK. That is me. All right, we are kicking off episode number 31 of the podcast. So,
Mhm.
per the usual, we are going to jump right in with updates that we both have. Some of them involve lifting, some involve running, some involve living.
I don't know if there's much running updates today,
Okay.
unless you
Well,
have one.
ooh.
I don't have any.
I do not have anything running related to update now. All right. So with that
Uh,
being said, what do you have going on these days? Any
okay.
updates?
So, my first update is I started a new lifting program
All right.
last
All
week.
right. Okay.
Yeah, which you already know because I was texting you about how sore I was.
Yeah, which is a great sign.
Yeah, it kind of sucked because in Denver we had very poor AQI, so I kept moving my running speed workout later into the week so
Mm,
that I wouldn't be inhaling smoke. So it ended up being I lifted the day before speed, and it was the new lifting program, so very sore, and then sore from speed, so it was like double compounded soreness. But have you are you familiar with Natasha Ocean? I think is how you say your last name.
yes, I am. I'm aware of her. I'm not familiar specifically with all of her programming. I'm more aware of her from the nutrition world.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I got one of her programs, her hybrid program.
Oh, nice. Okay. I
Yeah,
was about to ask you what you were following.
yeah. So I actually heard about it from Reddit, which is kind of
Okay.
funny. But she has a couple programs that are available. But basically, I was looking for. So I'm different than you in that I don't want a lifting coach. I just want something to follow because I feel confident like adjusting as I need to, whether it's based on my equipment or like putting it in my own schedule and everything. So I just wanted something because I realized that part of why I've struggled to fit lifting in is just because like I'm tired of making this decision of what to do when I want to lift. And then,
Absolutely relatable.
yeah, or it's like I end up doing the same thing and that's like not as exciting, even though I haven't looked fully week to week in her program, but I'm assuming, you know, in most programs, week after week is not super different. But
Yeah.
her hybrid program, it's made to go. She puts some running in, which obviously I'm not going to follow, and then the lifting to go along with it. But I like it because one, she has her own app. I really like apps.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to follow. And she basically has like, there's four, I think four different lifting sessions you can follow. No, there's more than that. There's four like big ones. So there's lower body hypertrophy, upper body hypertrophy, full body power, full body functional, and then there's two short running specific ones.
Oh,
So
nice. Okay.
yeah, I like that because it can give me a lot of flexibility to like pick and choose. So last week I did the full body functional, and then on my second lifting day I did both of the running specific, which I will not do in the future.
Okay.
They're like 20-minute ish workouts, but they are the ones that have more plyometrics. So I think it was just a lot of plyometrics in one day since I did them back to back. Um,
That totally makes sense now with the text.
yeah,
That definitely makes sense.
yeah. That was actually over the weekend. I did the functional one
Oh,
on
okay.
the day before speed, but that one, there was some, I don't remember which movement, but it was some either plyo or like power movement. So but yeah, I'm excited about that because I can just open the app and be like, okay, this is what I'm doing today and not put much thought into it.
Yeah, that's I think removing the guesswork
Hmm.
can be super super helpful. Well, I like that. Okay.
Yeah.
How many weeks are you into it as of right now?
I just started last week. So
Just started. Okay.
I haven't decided this week if I'm going to do like another, like the full body power from last week.
Hmm.
And then a run specific from this week and then maybe like the lower body from last week. I haven't decided how I'm going to like pick the bigger days,
Yeah.
or if I'm just going to do like the two full body days. Because I don't really like splitting up upper and lower as much. Mainly because I usually do 2 days of lifting, so it's like,
Yeah.
you split it up and then I don't know. It's like more, especially for the lower body.
Yeah. Well, the next time we chat, you'll be what, about 2 to 3 weeks into it
Yeah,
then at that point. So we can get a gauge on how you're feeling with that.
yeah,
Because what's the next event you've got coming up? It's a couple of 5Ks, right? Or am I
yeah.
making
Two
that
road
up? Yeah.
5Ks. So not
Okay.
until October.
Gotcha. How long do you initially believe that you'll run this particular program?
Um, that's a good question. Probably longer than 12 weeks since I'm not doing all of the workouts
Okay.
within like one of her weeks in one of my
Hmm.
weeks. So that'll expand it a little bit. Um, yeah, I
Okay.
mean,
So 12 weeks
honestly,
or more.
probably until I get sick of it.
That's that's helpful. Yeah, I one of the reasons that I asked that question is because when when evaluating, when evaluating, giving feedback on a program and things like that, when I'm talking to somebody about programs that they've done before, when I
Mhm.
ask, okay, so what have what programs have you done and different things like that, what I used to not do was get an understanding for how long they did that particular program. So if they were doing
Mm,
something that was from an app, or if they were working with a trainer like myself who was programming for them specifically, I used to not ask how long they did it. And I realized at some point, it's been years now, and I realized at some point that there was a decent amount of what we call program hopping happening.
mm,
So someone would say like, yeah, I've done the X program, and in fact they were doing that program plus like pulling bits and pieces from 2 to 3 other programs at
oh,
the same time. Yeah. So I've talked about this somewhat on my podcast periodically here and there on episodes where I am like primarily focused on fitness. I think when it comes to being able to give constructive review, feedback, criticism, compliment, whatever about a training program, that it I really primarily will listen if you've run through a full cycle of that training program. So if it's an 8 week
mm,
program, if it's a 12 week, whatever, because jumping in and out of like, yeah, well, I did, a couple days a week, I would do that program, and then I would go to this class. And then, sometimes me and my friends would get together and we just kind of make it up. Then, while in some cases there's nothing wrong with that approach, depending on what your goals are, it makes it's like it removes a lot of context for what you might need to
yeah,
assess whether or not a program was actually effective. Like
yeah.
that's kind of the thing. It would be the analogy of if I asked you for a recommendation, like what you thought about a particular restaurant that you went to, and you had gone to dinner there, and then you didn't mention that you also brought like other ingredients in your bag and added them to the food and never told me. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like that's it's a bit more prevalent than I had realized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't plan on program hopping, so that's like
Yeah.
that's way too many decisions on
Yeah.
putting
I,
multiple programs within
I
a week. I
agree.
can barely do one. But
Yeah,
yeah, I'll
and
probably
by the
do
way,
it
my intention with bringing that up wasn't to say that you are planning on program hopping. That
yeah.
was me basically getting a rant off my chest. 'Cause that's
That's
what that
fair.
was. Yeah.
Yeah. Um I think
Yeah.
I have 12 or 13 weeks until my first 5K.
Okay.
So I'll probably do it until then, and then the next 5K is like 2 weeks later. So I'll probably just like do it for 2 more weeks, but maybe not in the order that she has. Just like go back
Yeah.
to workouts I haven't done.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and
Okay.
then go from there. Maybe restart it. Who knows?
We shall see. And what's the pricing for it?
I think it came out to 54 US dollars because the prices on her site are Australian, I think.
I believe she is in Australia. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
And how long is that? Is that monthly?
mm-mm,
No. Oh.
one
Oh.
cost. Yeah. It's like
Wait. So it's one cost. Yeah. What? I'm confused. It's one cost, and then you run that program for however long that program is.
yeah. It's like a program,
Uh,
a pre-built program.
oh, got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Get it.
And
Okay.
then like you have
Because
like
there's so
time to
many models,
access.
like the
There's so
monthly
many
training
models.
apps and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Okay. I
Yeah.
got you.
So
I'm
like she
thinking of
already
like,
built all of this. So like I have
oh, nice.
access to week 1 through 12 and then I can
Nice.
pick and
Okay.
choose. And then she has a PDF that goes with it that also goes over some nutrition stuff if that's like something people need and like the running stuff too, obviously. But
That's cool.
seems like a good value and I'm excited.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to hearing updates on how that's going. All
Yeah.
right, cool. All right.
Okay, my other update. If you follow me
Hmm,
on Instagram, listeners, obviously you do, JK.
I do. I do follow
You may have seen my discussion on Monday about our potential ghost, which the people don't think it's a ghost, but I'm going to tell you what
you.
happens. You're going to get the full story. I think Instagram probably did. But anyway, this is what happened.
Okay. Everybody sit back, grab a cold drink,
Yeah.
and here we go.
Okay, so in our kitchen, there is a half cup measuring cup that lives in the drying rack next to the sink because I use it every morning for oatmeal. So, like, scoop out the oats, rinse out my cup, put it in the drying rack, repeat every single day. And Sunday, I was going to Ty's baseball game with him, so I ran earlier than usual. And then I was going to make my oatmeal so I could take it in the car with us so we could get going. And I turned to the drying rack, and the measuring cup isn't there. And like, this is the only use of this measuring cup in our household. So I'm like, Ty, where did you put this measuring cup? Because like I didn't move it. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't move it. So we're like looking through the kitchen, can't find it. And we were running late. So I was like, okay, whatever. I have other measuring cups from when I had my baking business and I needed separate stuff for my gluten-free products for like to separate when I use flour versus almond flour. So I substituted that measuring cup. Fine, whatever. And then didn't really think much about it. And then Monday morning, Ty had already gone to work, and I go to make my oatmeal, and the measuring cup is back exactly where I thought I left it on Saturday. So I text Ty, and I was like, "Oh my god, you found the measuring cup! Where was it?" And he texts me back, and he's like, "I didn't find it. What are you talking about?" And I was like, "What do you mean? What am I talking about?"
That's wild.
Yeah, and I was like, "You really didn't find it?" And then he called me and he was like, "What are you talking about? The measuring cup is back." So at this point, I'm like, "Okay, this is not an elaborate prank that he's playing on me because like this would be very he'd be very dedicated to the bit if this was the case." And for the people that don't know Ty, he's not really a prankster. So it never really crossed my mind that he was like playing a
Hmm.
prank on me because that was
Okay.
some of the responses I got were like, he's just messing with you. And I was like, no, I really don't think so. So then while we're on the phone, he's like, it could be a squatter. And I was like, what?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. Because I was like, I think we have a ghost. And he was like, what if someone is living in our downstairs basement room? Our basement's unfinished, and we're like working on the room down there to make it a guest room. He's like, could be a squatter living down there. And I'm alone in the house at this point, and I'm like, literally, why are you telling me this if you think
Right.
this? Because you're not going to be home for, 12 hours or something. And he was like, I'll check when I get home. And I was like, okay. And then he's texting me, he's like, we should get a ring camera. And he orders one from
Yeah.
Amazon. So we have a ring camera now in the kitchen.
Okay.
But for all the listeners who think Ty was messing with me, I really don't think so. Otherwise, like, he took it too far with his camera bit. So then everyone, a lot of people are like, it was obviously pumpkin then. And
Yeah, because my first thought was one of your cats.
Yeah, my first thought too. I was like, this little shithead took my measuring cup and took it to the basement. But I went to like, when he steals stuff, he takes it to the open space in the basement. So it wasn't there.
Hmm.
We did not see the measuring cup at all on Sunday. So originally, I too thought it was pumpkin. I was like, okay, this might be lost forever. Or
Yeah.
I thought that like one of us accidentally put it in like the trash or recycle, and then our trash recycle day is Monday. So Ty had taken the bags out, so I was like, oh, it's lost forever. But the reappearance is really what is throwing me off because I just cannot believe that if Pumpkin stole this, that
Yeah.
he thought to bring it back to where he got it from.
Was it situated exactly the same way that
Yes.
you? Did you ever hear about this story about a guy that had like a mouse in his shed that kept rearranging things?
No.
Okay. Let me try and look this up super quick. Mouse rearrange. Rearranging shed. Yeah. Okay. So I
A
remember hearing
mouse.
this. Yeah. So it says like mouse filmed tidying up man's shed every night. I think it was somewhere in the UK or something like that. So it was like certain items on the guy's workbench
Oh.
that yeah, this was, I guess this was back in 2019. I recently heard about it though, like sometime within the last year. But yeah, this guy was like, something is up because someone keeps getting into my shed and
Yeah.
rearranging my tools and stuff. And so finally he put a camera in there and yeah, that's what was happening. I think it was like what what freaked him out, if I remember correctly, people can look this up. Like if you just look up mouse rearranging shed, you'll find it.
Yeah.
But if I remember correctly, what what he was weirded out about was the fact that nothing was missing. It's that they were like
Mm.
organized because he had stuff all over the place, and then he would come in, and then it was organized. So when he put a camera
Oh,
up, it turned out it was actually a mouse that was doing it
interesting.
the entire time. So
So
I don't
you're
know.
saying that one of your theories now is that it's a mouse.
I'm inserting that into like onto the possibility list.
Yeah.
I also believe that would be a low possibility with the amount of cats that you have, though.
Yeah, but here's
Like
the
one
thing
would
about
think.
our cats. They
I already know where you're about to go. Like
they just like
usefulness
to
is zero.
they like to play with things. Yeah. They're like
Negative 1 million protective aura. That's what
yeah,
the how the
like
kids would say it.
sometimes they'll turn into killers and do what we want, but
Yeah.
although I've never seen them interact with the mouse, so I can't say how they would
Okay.
react to one. But yeah, with certain bugs, they'll just like paw at it, and I'm just like, can you please just kill it? Like
That's
before it crawls
interesting.
under the couch, and then I don't know where it is until it resurfaces. But yeah, I don't know about the mouse theory because why would it take it away and then bring it back the next day?
I
And
don't
where?
know.
Okay, the biggest question here is where was it when it was missing?
You are aware that I'm not like heavily invested in my theory. I'm just
Yeah,
throwing it out there.
I mean it
Yeah,
goes
I'm
for
just throwing it
all
out
of the
there.
theories.
Yeah. I think it's plausible though.
A lot of things
I
are
think the
plausible.
least plausible is that you have a squatter.
Oh yeah. Well,
That one to me is the least plausible. And then
Ty checked the whole basement last night when he got home and
yeah, well,
confirmed
it'd
there's
be
no one
interesting to
down
see
there.
what the ring camera comes up with then.
Yeah. Well, last night was uneventful. We just we saw Pumpkin on the counter as he always does right after we went to sleep. And that was it for the whole night until Ty woke up. Our other theory, well, my two theories are the ghost, obviously, or it was a
Hmm.
glitch in the Matrix and we were swapped in another timeline for a day.
Okay. All right.
And okay,
You've lost me.
I've seen TikToks, which obviously people are liars, so who knows how true things are. Of just like weird things happening, but it's not usually like a whole day. Anyway, so Ty's other
Okay.
theory is that one of us was sleepwalking and took it, and then I guess slept walk for another night and took it back. But the lingering question still is, where was it when it wasn't in the drying rack.
All right. Well, you just keep us posted, Kelly. I,
JK, this is the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me, and I just cannot make sense of it in my brain because I know what I saw.
my grandfather used to have this saying, and he would say, "Just keep on living." Just keep on. So, if this is one of the weirdest things that's ever happened to you, you just keep on living, my friend.
It's one of the most nonsensical things that's happened to me, I guess I should say.
Yeah, again, just keep on living. Every day I'm confronted with things that make less than 0 cents. So, yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
so
we'll see what happens.
that's the
All
biggest
right.
news in this household.
Okay. Good to hear. Anything else you got for updates or?
No, I'll leave it there.
Okay. I've got a couple.
Okay.
So first, big news on my end is I was going to say the long anticipated, and then quite quite transparently, we have kept a lot of this under wraps for quite some time. So I am with two other partners getting ready to launch a t-shirt company called Feed Your Habits. So that's going to be
Ooh.
launching. Actually, what we're recording on the 30th. So official launch day is August 1st. However, we are fully up and running with, I believe we've got, excuse me, I believe we've got 5 designs up on our
Mm,
website right now. We've gone through our sampling process. We've got some like finalized product that we already have in the hands of a few people so that we could try and get an understanding of what was happening, behind the scenes because we're doing print on demand. So we're not
mm,
doing like where we're going to house physical inventory. So it's typically, let's say about a 4 to 7 day turnaround between order and print and then ship. So yeah, that's big news. So that's been, and I'm assuming will probably continue to be a very interesting learning process on the behind the scenes and all of the little all of the little things that are actually really big things in the
yeah.
process of starting a product based company and then fulfilling orders and details and thinking of there's not a day that's gone by yet when there hasn't been something that we were like, oh yeah, we need to update that process or tweak that process or put that
Mm,
system in place, like that sort of a thing. Not to, and I don't say that to like turn anybody off and be like all of a sudden, oh, well, that means I'm not going to get my order. Nothing like that. I'm just being somewhat transparent as I want to be around like it's an interesting process, very different than getting started in coaching. Like very, very
mm,
different, especially when you're working as a team. So it's myself and two other friends of mine. So we each have very different zones of genius, like very different zones of genius, which play extremely well together
mm.
because pretty much for like our head designer is Luke and pretty much like the stuff that he loves to do, we don't love to do. And the stuff that he may hate to do, either myself or my partner Kyle, we love to do. Like it's so we all yeah, it's been a cool process just to get off the ground and we know the hardest work is still in front of us. So if anybody is interested, little plug, you can just go to feedyourhabits.com and I didn't run this by you, but I do have a discount code that
Oh,
people can use too. Yeah.
yeah,
It's
we can
just
put it in the show notes.
JKF. Yeah. So we'll pop it in the show notes. It's just JKFYH, and FYH is for Feed Your Habits. So JKFYH. I believe it's case sensitive, so you got to do all caps, but
Okay.
that'll get you an additional 10% off on top of the product. And yeah, we're
Nice.
fully up and running and shipping like right now. But August 1st is our official launch.
And this comes out
So just a
August
couple
2nd.
days.
So,
Yeah, so yeah, we will have already been up and running. And for right now, just available in the United States as
mm.
of right now. Yeah, that's also been part of the learning process. Oh boy, yeah. So yeah,
That's exciting.
that's a big thing. Yeah, that's a big thing that's going on right now. So we've got that, and then the other. thing that I had on my updates was regarding training. So this is something that front of mind today because I had just sent some stuff off to my coach to give him like a recap of how the last week or so has gone. And one of the things that I noted was in my training, noticing how distracted I had been while
Oh.
like during my workouts and noticing things like in between rest periods. I routinely like will grab my phone in between rest periods. I mean, I typically use an app to log my weights and all that stuff. However, I was finding that I would like open up text to like return text messages. I would open up like my client communication app to like review any client communication, open up my email, open up Instagram to respond to DMs, open up this, open up that.
Yeah.
If I have my iPad with me, then maybe I was like, I don't really want to listen to music. I want to watch a YouTube video instead in between sets. So then like pop that up. So I was noticing that I was becoming distracted for
Mm.
sure in my training and just bringing it up one from a standpoint of like, yeah, here's an update on kind of what's going on. Um, and one of the reasons that I've identified that as something I really need to readdress and dial back in is because it's been lengthening the amount of time that my workouts are
Mm.
taking.
Yep.
So that's one. And then I guess 1A, like linked to that then is I would be getting to particular points in the workout where I still had, say, like two movements left. However, I was getting near to the end of the window where I wanted to still be in the gym. Like I needed to cut time off because I need to go, you know, take care of this thing or go, do a drop off or whatever. And it affects the effectiveness of the training program itself, you know? And for somebody like me, I do have the flexibility and the knowledge also to be able to take like a particular workout and be like, okay, well, I can do this part on this day, and then I can just do the accessory stuff on the other day, which I do sometimes. However, I found that I was relying on that as opposed to going back and fixing the issue that was like leading to me doing that. So
Mm.
distracted, distracted training is definitely something that has been front of mind for myself. So with the way that things usually go for me, when it's front of mind for me, it's likely something that I'll be more hyper aware with my clients too. Like just reach out to them and say, hey, here's something that's been on my radar for myself personally. Are you guys noticing anything like that too? To that sort of a thing. So I think that from a coaching standpoint, that can be a good way to not only show some self accountability and the fact that like share with your athletes that you're human too and
Mm-hmm.
you have some stuff that you're working on. It also is a good reminder that maybe there are some things that aren't part of the like normal check-in process, like with data and biofeedback. They're like, is anybody else noticing this sort of a thing? Then somebody may bring something up like, oh, actually, I totally have noticed that. I just didn't want to say anything. Like that's a classic line. I kind of have, but I didn't want
Yeah.
to say anything. And it's like, oh, well, but when you share that you've been going through the same thing, then it's almost like that opens the door
Mm-hmm.
to like, okay, well, I can talk to you about this now. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I just wanted to share that. That's a little tidbit from my training piece.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
those are my
were
updates.
we have that on our list to eventually talk about, right?
Yeah, yeah, that was
Oh
man. I
yeah,
can't even
common
remember when I.
distractions. I think you threw it
Yeah,
on last summer.
possibly. Yeah, welcome to
Maybe.
my world. Yeah, and now this summer. Yeah, because there's certain things that will be cyclical, and so what
Mm-hmm.
I do notice is this tends to be like this nearing the end of summer, and I don't know that it necessarily has to do with end of summer. I think it more has to do with it approaching my birthday, and for me, like
Oh.
birthday is yeah, because my birthday is at the end of August, so my birthday is kind of like how people think about New Year's is kind of how I think about my birthday. So
Mm.
I look at that as like okay, where are you right now? And in what I think is a mostly productive and positive way, but I take that time to like reflect and kind of think about things like I think many people do, quite honestly, based on what I've heard.
Yeah.
and then kind of formulate okay, in the next 3 to 4 weeks here, let's formulate how would we like this upcoming year of our life, like how would I like this upcoming year of my life to look,
Hmm.
and what will I need to do in order for that to happen. So I spend like a good amount of time kind of jotting down ideas and thinking of things. But for me, what I was noticing though, is that it wasn't just me like going into my notes app to jot something down. It was, oh, let me kind of check in and see what's going on here, like that sort of a thing. So it was
Yeah.
more distraction than it was like doing something productive,
Hmm.
to be honest with you. So yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then with especially that aligns with the feed your habits work that we've been doing, because I'm constantly like looking up different ideas, and launching a brand is not something that I've done before.
Yeah.
So you know and that's one of the areas that I'm primarily responsible for. My friend Kyle is primarily responsible for like all the financials, the operations, the systems, like behind the scenes. Like he is super good at that sort of a thing, keeping things nice and organized, punch list wise. And then Luke, who's our head designer, he is like a design genius, like just the way he thinks of things. And then I'm more along the lines of like the business strategy, the marketing, the branding, like all that stuff. So, yeah.
And what was the driver to creating this company?
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, Kyle and Luke have been friends with each other since at least high school, if not before that. And they're
Cool.
both in their 30s,
Okay.
mid 30s. Yeah. They're both in their 30s. So I don't know if I have the screenshot still. They years ago, like before I even met them. So I met Kyle back in 2012. I
Okay.
met him in 2012. And so I meet him. We become friends, and we decide that we are going to go to the Arnold
Hmm.
in Columbus. So that was like a few years later. We decided we're going to go to the Arnold. And then he's like, yeah, my boy Luke also is into bodybuilding and whatnot. He may want to go with us. So that's how we all three first got together.
Okay.
And I believe prior to that, they had tried to launch a t-shirt company, and it was called Feed Your Habits the whole time.
Oh.
So they've owned that, like that IG handle for years.
Oh.
Years. Yeah. So they attempted to do that with, I believe, at least one, if not two other people. They attempted to launch that, and to be straight up with you, it failed.
Hmm.
Like it totally failed. Whatever they were doing or whatnot, it failed. And I remember whenever I became aware of it, it was always just something that every now and then it would randomly pop up, like just randomly pop up. And because of the interest that all three of us had, like we had a common interest in the gym and fitness and nutrition and working out. So then when you go to the Arnold, there's all the vendor shows with t-shirts and, everything that's there.
Hmm.
And we fell in love, like all three of us really love this one company that's actually going to be going, is voluntarily ending, like going out of business, not
Oh.
because of financial reasons, called Live Large. They're still around right now, but we ended up getting to know the owner of Live Large, this guy named Nick. And it's just something that every now and then we would be like, man, that would be cool to have a company like kind of like that.
Hmm.
Like we looked forward to going to that booth every year since 2018. When we went to that booth, he would recognize us, which was wild to us
Whoa.
because, yeah, like it was wild to us because we're like, dude, we see you once a year. And he's like, oh, yeah, what's up, guys? Like yeah, he would like see us and be like, oh, hey, you guys are back. And we're like,
Yeah.
it's been a year, but okay. Yeah. And the quality of the product was like second to none. So we just constantly were thinking every now and then it would just pop up in conversation. And so finally, I have wanted to do something apparel wise for quite a while.
Mm.
I really wanted to do something apparel wise, and I'm into like the mantras and sayings and different things like that. Like I'm into that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I sent those guys a text like, I don't know, it might have been in April of this year.
Hmm.
That was basically just like, hey, do you think you might have some interest in basically like reviving that idea or something along those lines? And it was like an emphatic, yeah, basically, basically.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, well, let's make this work. So, things inched along for a while because I think I sent that text back in like mid-April or something like that. So
Yeah.
things inched along, and then we slowly but surely have been like building the system, building the website, building the designs, refining the designs, like just a whole bunch of stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's I don't know. It's really interesting because it's a handle that they had for a long time. It's
Yeah.
been at least a decade.
That's wild.
Like at least a decade. This thing, as far as I remember. Yeah.
Dang.
And I think they tried to launch it and ended up like ridiculously underwater. There was
Oh.
a whole debacle. Yeah.
Huh.
So they're bringing that experience to the table of already kind of having gone through certain things, but the world has changed quite a bit. That's like
Oh yeah.
pre-COVID.
That's
So
like pre almost Instagram. Like it's the inception of Instagram.
yeah, it's way back there. I may as we're chatting, I may like go back and try to see if I can find the screenshot that he had sent me to show like how long ago it was that they had it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what's up.
Oh,
So
congrats. That's exciting.
that's what's going on. Yeah, I'm really stoked about it and looking forward to growing it. Yeah, I'm really super looking forward to growing it. I think this could be something really really awesome. And we're just taking it like one order at a time.
Yeah.
We're getting one order at a time. Yeah, actually I found it. They started that Instagram in October of 2012.
Dang.
Yeah, October of 2012. So they've had that for over a decade, and it's perfect. Like the whole feed your habits, like that phrase is like perfect for what I believe in. Like
Yeah.
spot on. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it
it's
is
just meant to
very
be.
you.
Very much so. All right. So let's transition into our topic, yeah?
Yeah, yeah. You can
Okay.
intro since you brought it to the table.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna talk about tough love in coaching. And let's see a couple of places that this has come up where that really inspired me to shoot the message. Kelly, this is kind of the way that it goes. Like one of us is thinking about something, and so we'll just shoot a text and be like, I think this has enough substance for us to be able to do an episode on it. And also, in all fairness, I believe we could literally take anything and make an episode on it.
Yeah, I feel like there
I
have been
really think.
topics where we didn't think it through. It was like, what about this? And then we just started talking.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So, tough love coaching, where it's come to my popped up in my life algorithm recently.
yeah.
Couple of different aspects. One, threads. Threads is just, how do the kids say it? Like it's giving like just anything. It's a lot. There's a lot going on there. Like it's both like super interesting to me,
Yeah.
and also sometimes I'm like, man, I hope these people are okay. I hope they're gonna be okay.
To be fair, like, based on what I see you respond to compared to what I see in my own algorithm, your threads
Yeah.
is a wild place. Mine is like, mine doesn't have as much controversy as yours does. Or
Yeah,
like, yeah.
I don't know. I talked about if anybody hasn't listened to it, if you go on to the Help Me Understand podcast feed, the conversation that I had with Kylie near the end, we talked about kind of what was going on, like threads. So I'm not going to rehash that entire conversation. I think that it's, from my perspective, it's super apparent that people are utilizing specific language in order to get, like, it's like engagement bait. for
Yeah.
lack of a better way to put it. I mean,
Hmm.
to get
And that's
some
what it
people may call
is.
it like conversation starters or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's just sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to tell um, if somebody is truly doing it just for engagement, just to get comments, or if they're doing engagement. Let me rewind. It's difficult sometimes to tell, is it just something to do like engagement for the algorithm so
Hmm.
that it's like, okay, the algorithm picks up that I have a lot of comments on this, so it'll start showing my posts to other people,
Yeah.
or if it's engagement to boost actual like conversation on the page, even if you don't necessarily believe in the like exactly what you said. So,
Yeah.
for example, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, so I'll
Too
make it
late.
quick. Well, for example, like one that's floating around quite a bit is something along the lines of you shouldn't be a personal trainer if you don't look like one. Like
Yeah.
that, somebody will post that, right? And then if somebody's just posting for engagement bait, then what they'll do is it'll just be a whole like every response they'll basically just be like that kid who whenever you present like a logical argument to that, they're like, yeah, your mom. Like they just won't. They're just like keeping the engagement going because they just want to keep the energy going.
Yeah.
Versus somebody who is like they're just trying to keep the engagement going, and so they'll occasionally throw in like some comment that actually does make sense where they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I could see how you would think that, but I do still think like your body is your business card or something
Yeah.
like that. So yeah, it's very interesting. I told somebody else that it's basically kind of, to me, it's basically like the worst parts of like Clubhouse when Clubhouse was like really, really big in 2020.
Mm.
You get a decent amount of folks who like don't understand how to ask questions and things like that. So it's just interesting. So I do like to engage on there from time to time because it provides me with content and things
Yeah.
to like work on. Yeah, it gives me content really.
Yeah.
Like I may even I want to get a couple of episodes out within the next couple of days. So I may even do one that's just like three things from threads, like responding to three
Mm.
threads sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
all right. So anyways, so tough love coaching. So yeah, some stuff that I've come across on threads, and I'm going to shout out my friend Mark. He's a coaching friend. His name is Mark Breeden.
Okay.
And he is on Instagram as Training Strong Women. I've
Mm.
had him on my podcast before. So I've had him on the Help Me Understand podcast. He's titles himself as a weight neutral strength coach.
Mm.
So he is specifically focused on training women who want to get stronger. He
Yeah.
does not focus on how much you weigh or what you look like or anything along those lines. He is specifically focused on getting you stronger. And some time ago, near the end of 2023, I want to say it was, he had actually recorded a podcast that was something about like tough love coaching. And so periodically
Mm.
on threads, I'll see like his response to people who are claiming what they're calling a tough love approach, where they're just like, people need to stop babying these clients or, like no excuses. Like if I can get it done, you can get it done. We all
Mm.
have, and I have a whole beef with the whole, like we all have the same 24 hours in a day because I
Yeah.
haven't seen anybody ever say same 24, but that sort of a thing. So he calls that stuff out. And I like his approach. And also we disagree on the effectiveness of tough love coaching.
Mm.
So that kind of brought it to mind. And then also another coaching friend of mine named Aram, who goes by 4 weeks to the beach on Instagram, he had posted this in his story some time ago where he tells the truth. Like he definitely shoots it straight with his posts on Instagram. And he said that somebody messaged him, or he sent a screenshot where somebody had messaged him and said, "Hey, I love your tough love approach to coaching." So from my perspective, because I'm retelling this, it was in his stories. I don't think it's on his feed any longer. What he talked about was, hey folks, I want to make sure that you do understand that even though many of my posts have like this tough love approach, I don't use the same approach with every single client.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, when I'm working one-on-one with somebody, so this is how you typically like a green flag for somebody is when they're taking the time to delineate between here's what I post and then here's the layers beneath that. Like here's the context behind that. Like the
Yeah.
post isn't the entire message, people. So he was just like, when I'm actually working one on one with someone, there may be some people who need a bit more of a different approach, something that they may look at as an more empathetic approach versus someone else who responds better to like a no excuses sort of approach or like stop whining.
Hmm.
It all depends sort of a thing. So that's where it came to mind for me to bring this up as a topic with let's talk about tough love coaching. What in your mind, like what is it? And your approach, my approach, do you think it works? Do you not think it works? Like I just wanted to chop it up on this topic of tough love coaching. So I'll first I'll give the definition that I put the prompt into ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, let us know what ChatGPT thinks. Because I
yeah, so
think
the
this
prompt.
is an important piece of people's responses too.
Okay, okay, good. So the prompt that I put is please tell me what it, or actually, I'll give the full prompt that I put in there. I said, I'm going to be participating in a podcast discussion. The podcast talks about fitness. Our next topic is about tough love. Please tell me what is a tough love approach from a personal trainer and give me some example scenarios. So, where it started is it says, a tough love approach from a personal trainer involves being straightforward, direct, and sometimes strict with clients to help them achieve their fitness goals. This method is used to motivate and push clients beyond their comfort zones, emphasizing accountability and hard work. So I did then put in a follow up prompt where I said, what is the opposite of a tough love approach? And the response that I got was the opposite of a tough love approach in personal training is a more nurturing and supportive approach, often referred to as a gentle or empathetic approach. This method focuses on positive reinforcement, encouragement, and understanding the client's perspective. So, first, agree or disagree in general. Well, yeah, agree or disagree, what would you phrase differently? Like what to you, how close to accurate or how close does that definition from ChatGPT match what you think of when you think of a tough love approach? So tough love approach, straightforward, direct, and sometimes strict. It's used to motivate and push beyond comfort zones. It emphasizes accountability and hard work.
I would agree with that
Okay.
definition.
Okay.
I feel like and this might take us on a tangent, but the way it's stated,
It's like our whole podcast.
yeah, the way it's stated, I completely agree with it. And then I feel like people take tough love and they put a negative connotation on it. Like there's nothing negative in this definition about being straightforward, direct, strict. Sure, it could be a little negative,
Uh-huh.
um, but I agree with this because it's not like the stereotypical tough love is like being mean to your clients kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
or like Goggins. Goggins comes to mind when I think of tough love.
Yeah. Okay.
But I
Okay.
agree with this because that's that's all tough love is. It's just like being straightforward and honest based on
Okay.
their goals.
Okay. So I'm also going to pull up, let me see if any of the people that responded on Instagram. Okay.
I know that some of the responses were like tough love makes me cry.
Well, so first from a how we would describe tough love. Okay. So there's, ChatGPT, which is a collection of internet information, basically.
Yeah.
Then there's, how you talked about it. There's, let me see, let's see, somebody said tough love. This is from responses I got on Instagram. Tough love is accountability, telling me how it is truthfully, no fluff or sugarcoating, while still showing empathy, is what one person said. Somebody who's a tough love coach is, they said, I think they're real coaches and not just accountability partners or cheerleaders. And then one person said, "You mean honest coaching?" Shout out, Ty. All right. So, so from the standpoint of tough love coaching,
Yeah.
this might be the massive spoiler alert, possibly, to the entire conversation. From my perspective, this is probably maybe the spoiler alert for the whole thing. A tough love approach first starts from a place of love.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that, when I talk about love, when it comes to a coach client relationship, is not whatever weird thing people want to make it. Let's just put it in the aspect of a tough, caring approach. So, first, if you don't care about the person, then it is often what the dark side of a quote unquote tough love approach is. If you don't care
Hmm.
about the individual and or what you're trying to actually accomplish, like you don't care about getting them the result that they're looking for, like they want to finish that particular event, they want to perform well. In my case, like they want to get stronger, they want to be healthier, they want to look better, like those sorts of things, and still show up the way that they want to, like they want to show up well in life.
Hmm.
If you don't care about those particular things, then yeah, the tough love approach is lacking the love. It's lacking the caring. So all you're doing is just being a tough person.
Yeah.
All right. So this has been episode number 31.
I didn't know if you were going to continue. Well, one of the things that bothered me when you first started this was the
Yeah.
assumption that being supportive and being tough love are separate things. Like they can't, there's no overlap.
Ooh,
But
speak
like
on
what
that.
you just said is like if you're being supportive, sometimes you have to give tough love. And it's like this with anything in our lives. Like think about friendships or romantic relationships. Like there are times when you need to give tough love because you care about the other person or like your relationship with that person. And coaching's the same thing. It's like I'm not going to let you just skip all your runs and then run a marathon and get hurt. Like at some point I'm going to step in and be like, "Hey, if you want to do this, then you need to start doing these other things. Otherwise, I can't recommend that you do this race anymore." And that's tough
Yeah.
love. But it's not like I don't know. I also don't like that. I don't like that you're the coach on Instagram that people think that he is a tough love coach. Because most good coaches, like he was saying,
Hmm.
aren't just one approach. Like you use tough love sometimes, you use empathy in other times, and like a more gentler approach. And it really depends on the situation and the individual. But at the basis, like you need to care and you need to build that
Yeah.
relationship so that the tough love actually lands and doesn't feel like, wow, she's just being really mean to me, or he, or they.
Yeah. That I could not agree with that more. So going back to referencing my friend Mark's podcast episode, I went back to re-listen to it, and something that he brought up that I think does play into this is whether subconsciously or consciously, there's this interchangeability of the terms tough love and no excuses.
Yeah.
And I don't see those I don't, one, I don't see those as the same thing.
Hmm.
And also that is for sure based on my perspective as being someone who on occasion has been described as having a tough love approach. I really don't know which. I'm going to say I don't know. I know. I mean, I know exactly how I coach and who I am. I am super situation dependent.
Yeah.
Super situation dependent. And one of the things, again, with the interchangeability of the terms, it's like no excuses. There was something that Mark said on that podcast where he said no excuses implies that there are no good reasons to, for example, miss a workout.
Yeah.
And when I'm talking to somebody, as much as I can remember, if I'm talking to somebody who says that they want a tough love approach, they will routinely say something along the lines of, I'm looking for a tough love approach, somebody who's just going to tell me like it is and not let me keep getting away with the excuses that I keep making. So I think the no excuses thing is part of that conversation for sure. And this is a super easy conversation for us to like do what we do best, which is like sometimes deep dive and get into semantics about like word choice and like, but what about this? And or maybe
Mm-hmm.
that I do more often. And also I think that, yeah, I think those are two terms that are pretty much used interchangeably as tough love and no excuses. And I think that more, while I don't agree that those are the same thing, I think that they're always bundled in together, like somehow. And whether or not something is a legitimate reason versus an excuse. And it's interesting because both of those things can they can be the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They can be fit like I was going to say the same product. It can be the same event. The same event can be a reason or an excuse. It
Yeah.
depends on how, it depends on a few other factors that go into it,
Mm-hmm.
which actually, I'll read a few more of the comments, but we can even use a couple of the scenarios that were brought up on the ChatGPT breakdown, which I thought were pretty interesting. Did you have anything else? I mean, anything else you're kind of thinking? I was going to just read a couple of the responses, but
I had something, but I think it might have left my brain.
okay. All right.
Um,
The
shoot.
ghost took it.
Yeah, the ghost in our house took it.
Yeah.
It was something around like especially with the Chat GPT examples that we'll get into and
Hmm.
assumptions
Okay.
people have about what tough love coaching is like the tough love version that people think it is lacks the effective step, I feel like. Because like if you just constantly tell someone there are no excuses, you need to get this in. I mean, one, it goes against everything we say on this podcast. Like, you need to listen to your body and like take in subjective feedback. And sometimes you need to adjust the plan and you don't always need to do it perfectly. But also, if as a coach, if you're just always saying, there are no excuses, you need to do this, that's not effective. You're not helping problem solve. You're not helping identify the actual issue.
Yeah.
You're just like, suck it up and do it, man.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah. Yeah. Something I just thought of as you were saying that is I think that the tough love approach that folks who don't agree with it or dislike it, or it kind of gives them the ick,
mhm,
they're looking at the tough love approach as being focused on the result, purely the result, and then coaching specifically to what the client didn't do as part of a rigid process.
yeah.
So your workouts were scheduled for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. The result that we are looking for is that you are going to be, you're going to get in 3 workouts. Let me rewind. We are training for we're training because you want to get stronger. You want to hit a 500-pound deadlift. To hit a 500-pound deadlift, here is my system. You train Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You deadlift on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You do 70%, 80%, and then 90% of your 3-rep max.
Hmm.
Each of those days. Monday, you do 70, blah, 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 blah. It's a very rigid process. I look at your results, or I look at your board, and I see that Monday's workout moved to Tuesday, Wednesday's workout moved to Friday, Friday's workout moved to Sunday.
Hmm.
So I reach out to you and I say, one, you're off track. If you continue this, you are not going to reach the result you're looking for. You're not going to hit a 500-pound deadlift. And also, you keep changing your workout days, and this is why you're not going to be successful, because you cannot follow a process. So all I've done in that particular process, some people may think, I think that the folks who arduently like, that's not even a word, who like emphatically argue against the tough love approach are picturing that sort of a scenario where it is focused on, this is the outcome that we are training for.
Mm.
And then when that person is quote unquote coaching, they're simply they're very like narrow minded where they're calling out you missed this
Yeah.
and something's wrong with you because you're not executing my plan.
Hmm.
And I think that's usually the argument that I will get from people who disagree with a tough love approach. They think that they're in their perspective that's what tough love is. A tough love approach is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's
Yeah.
also an assumption that tough love, oh, like, it's really coming into play when people are missing workouts, moving things around, making excuses not to get things done. But I think tough love is just being willing to have the hard conversations with people. Like sometimes it is those situations where we're missing workouts, like veering off the training plan. But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of what I see is also like people doing too much and having to have that tough love conversation. Like, hey, this is also not serving your goal. Cause like the tough love tends to come with like, you're not doing enough. You need to be doing more, you
Mm.
know?
Okay.
But there's
Yeah.
also the other end. It's like, you're doing too much, then that's detrimental to your goal as well. Or like, especially working with women, it's like, hey, you need to eat more, which is a very tough love conversation to have.
Yeah.
Or things like that. Like, you need to prioritize sleep a little more. It's not always like around training, but yeah, I think
Yeah.
people have that assumption that it's like, oh, I'm not doing enough in my training. And then my tough love coach is going to be like, suck it up, stop making excuses, get your training in. But it's a lot more. It applies to a lot more scenarios and it's necessary, I would say, in coaching.
Yeah, I can think of a scenario that just came to mind because of what you were talking about, where it's like it's not always around doing like not doing enough or what you're missing. I I gave somebody feedback. Um, it wasn't exactly like feedback. I asked somebody a question.
Okay.
So I noticed that they were consistently adding stuff to their training.
Mm,
So, for example, it would be like I did this particular workout, and even though we had 4 days of weight training and 2 or 3 days of cardio, I think it was 1 or 2 days of zone two. It was something like 2 days of zone two and 1 day of sprints, or
hmm.
1 day of zone two and 2 days of sprints, something like that.
Yeah.
Definitely sufficient for what we were looking to get done within a particular time frame, fit well with their lifestyle, required some challenge, like for sure. It
Hmm.
wasn't like a walk in the park. Like they definitely still had to make some sacrifices and things like that and be really intentional in order to get it done. So it wasn't one of those like I can like close my eyes and walk through this. Like it still took some effort. What I had noticed is that over, let's say, about a 3 week period, because 2 weeks usually isn't enough for me to see a pattern, but over
Hmm.
a 3 week period, I started to notice that they would do things add like add a bicep curl finisher on the upper body workout. And then it's like I'm going to add some ab work on this other workout. And
Hmm.
then I did my zone two and then I did some sprints, like always adding these different things. And as part of one of the conversations that we were having, they were also talking to me about somewhat stressful situation that they had that was going on. And they were talking to me about that situation within the lane of, hey, how are things going overall from stress management, your sleep, your nutrition, and things like that. And I mentioned that because I'm still very cognizant of understanding like the lane that I'm in, which is primarily the training. But when we get into the conversation about factors that support your training, that stuff makes a difference. So they were talking about a particular situation that they were dealing with at work with a boss, and they were like, yeah, I know I'm going to have to face that situation sooner or later and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, it's stressing me out. I'm not sleeping that well and all these other things. So I asked them something along the lines of like, how much longer are you going to continue to try to avoid addressing that situation by doing more with your
Mm,
training? Because from my standpoint, you're adding unnecessarily and potentially harmful volume on
Mhm.
top of what you're currently doing, because you've also mentioned that because of the stress that you're dealing with, you're not getting in all of the nutrients that you need, which means you're likely not properly recovered. And you also have mentioned that you have not necessarily been sleeping very well, like you haven't slept very restfully and things like that. And while I'm certainly not in a position to like coach you through handling whatever situation you've got, like that clearly is something that is affecting what you're doing from a training standpoint. Like, at what
Mhm.
point do you want to actually address that instead of using like training as the band-aid? And the feedback was like, oh, that's, it wasn't something like tough love. It was something along those lines of like, oh, snap. That was kind of, nobody's said it that way before, or I
Yeah.
didn't realize that. And that, we've got a great relationship. It's a client who's been with me for close to 3 years now. And one of the things that they've recently mentioned is like the connection is helpful just because we kind of bring all those pieces in. And they saw that as a tough love approach,
Mhm.
whereas I could easily see someone else being like, well, that's rude. I was like, I, okay. Like, I don't know. I don't want to play like we play like a tough love or empathy. Like, which,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. Random example and also a real example. Like that was a super real example because I tend to attract like hard like type A type
Yeah.
folks who like they can still train like type A when the better that they can manage like their training, they would be able to train type A and work type A and live type A if they
Mhm.
could actually be like more efficient with their training.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, somebody else may say like, "Oh, that was really out of pocket. That was a rude thing to say," like that sort of a thing. And to me, it was like a straight up observation
Yeah.
of like, okay, it's clear what's happening here. So is that tough love? I don't know.
I think it would fall under my definition of tough love.
Yeah, I tend to think that even let's take it outside of training, like that when people are talking about a tough love approach, it's they're looking at it as an approach that doesn't take into account the other person's feelings at all. So it's like, I'm going to
Yeah.
say this to you, even if I know it's going to hurt your feelings. And I think that's the part where people get like really butthurt about the tough love approach.
I mean, that is in some situations what tough love entails.
Yeah. So am I like,
I don't think that's
am,
not taking into consideration the other person's feelings, though. Like, if you can't avoid every conversation just because it's going to hurt someone's feelings. So I feel like the tough love is like being willing to have that conversation despite the fact that, like, it's not something the other person really wants to hear, you know? Like, thinking
yeah,
about from, like, friendship, relationship standpoint, like,
mm,
if I have an issue with Ty, but I don't want to hurt his feelings, like, that's no way, in my opinion, to have a marriage be successful, you know? And same with him. Like, we got to talk
I think
about,
that's tough though. Yeah. I think bringing relationships into it is tough though.
but it's a similar concept.
Mm, I think it muddies the waters way more when you're in a relationship because there's a committed like relationship versus a one person is clearly leading the process.
Mm, like the power dynamics kind of thing.
Yeah. Which I mean, if we want to go like full JD Vance, we could. I'm joking. All right. So
Okay, well, okay, let's say
I was
at
joking about
work,
that. Oh, okay.
if you're a manager and you notice
Yeah.
your employee is like
Yeah. I'm in that position
not performing as well as they
myself.
should be,
Uh huh.
like you're gonna bring it up. It's probably gonna hurt their feelings, but like you either have to bring it up so that they can improve and have a chance at improvement, or you don't bring it up and they get fired. Those are obviously two
That
black and
is
white
that is
things,
so
but
spot on for what I work with and around
yeah,
on the regular. Like
yeah,
very, very much so. And I'm always careful to like not get into super specifics. And it's been that way like since I've been in the positions that I've been in. I'll have a conversation with the person and let them know like straight up this conversation is maybe about 40% related to specifically like the role that you have right now, and more like 60% if I just feel this sense of, if I don't give you a heads up on this, your future career, because typically I'm in an area where I'm working with folks who this is more of like a part-time, like this is not their final career, not what they're going to college for, like that sort of a thing.
Hmm.
I'm like 40% of what I'm going to talk to you about is to try and get immediate, give you immediate feedback about like a particular role that you play right now. And 60% of it is actually related to you 5 years from now, when you
Hmm.
get into a position where you're then responsible for a family. And if you keep going the way that you're going, you're going to lose a job and not be able to support yourself and or your family.
Yeah.
And that's just like, that tends to be one of the ways that my brain is wired. Like, I'm somewhat futuristic in the feedback that I'm giving. Same with clients. Like, I'm giving you feedback not just about like how to execute the next workout. It's like we walk through questions like, okay, so why are you thinking that way? Like, what do you
Hmm.
think the options are? Because then 2 workouts down the road, you may have the same scenario. I want you to be able to work through a particular thought process. I think you bring something up that's really a really important part of this conversation, is the assumption that a tough love approach does not take into account someone's feelings. I think that a tough love approach to coaching, managing, leading, whatever header you want to put on it, I think a tough love approach takes into account the feelings and is willing to work through that as part of the conversation.
Hmm.
Because I think that a tough love coach is not somebody who goes like halfway. So, say for instance, if I were to, going back to the example that I had, where I give the person the feedback of, I'm seeing this particular pattern, and it seems like you are willing to consistently put more energy into this, while you've let me know that you have this other area that you're flat out avoiding.
Hmm.
And I don't just leave it at that. It's also, okay, so while I do understand that I'm not equipped to know all the ins and outs of what you've got going on from a business standpoint and things like that, when is a time that you believe that you can give yourself a deadline to address this situation? What resources, or when is a deadline that you can give yourself to reach out to a resource, somebody who is qualified to help you start working through whatever disagreement you're having with your boss? Like things like that. Versus, I think I could definitely see somebody being like, tough love is basically like, it's basically like you drop the bomb and then walk away. No, I'm willing to stick around and help you clean up.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a big part of it too. Like, you understand that you are about to get into a really uncomfortable conversation. And here's the thing too, for folks who are actually tough love coaches, many times it's just as awkward for them slash me too. Like, it's not always a super comfortable thing,
No.
especially if you do feel like a sense of responsibility with assisting, like being a partner as they try to work through those particular things. So I think that's a piece of it too.
Yeah.
Anybody can like say something and then walk away.
That's all social media is.
Pretty,
You say
pretty much.
something and then walk away.
I could
That's
actually,
why
I
I
could
think,
totally see that in the comments where somebody's like, "Guess you can't handle tough love," and it's like, what? That wasn't
yeah.
even tough love. All you're doing is commenting, troll.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where a lot of these assumptions around tough love comes. Because, like, I mean, I know I've
Mm,
made posts, you've probably made posts that's like, it does sound firmer and more like no excuses kind of thing. But it's
yeah,
like something a lot of people need to hear. But just like you were saying a while back when we started this topic, like the one post is not all of the layers. It's just like
right.
a digestible way for people to take it in on social media in particular, and a way that, let's be real, gets more views when you are like
Yeah,
shorter in what you're saying and more to the point, and like with less qualifiers and fluffy language.
yeah. I can recall a post that I did long time ago. It was like a couple years ago, probably, where I talked about your backup plan becoming your plan B is actually your plan A. So are you ready to like just admit that that's your plan? Your plan B is actually your plan A.
Uh-huh.
And I think at the time I'd used a graphic of like, when you set your alarm, say you set your alarm for 5:15
Yeah.
and then you have like 5:30,
Yeah.
5:45 and whatever. And I'm
Yeah.
like, at some point, you just got to be real with yourself and stop. Why are you setting
Yeah.
three
Just
snooze
set
alarms?
the
Just
latest
change it to
one.
6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Like, just change it to 6 o'clock. And
That's so relatable.
yeah, I was about to say that just, yeah. And if I
Uh,
remember correctly, that came from not just one, not, it's like LeBron when he joined the Heat, not one, not two, not three, not four. It came from multiple interactions where it would be something along the lines of, yeah, here's my routine. Okay, well, what time do you get up? Usually sometime between 5 and 6. And I used to just let that slide.
yeah.
And then I learned, again, to ask some additional questions. Like, okay, when you say between 5 and 6, that
Yeah.
is a really wide range, especially for
Mhm.
someone who is self-reporting that they train regularly in the morning. Do you really have that much flexibility in the morning that you can get up sometime between 5 and sometime between 6? And you said you go to classes too. So
Ooh.
how, like, help me
Yeah. I was
understand how
gonna
that
say, like, I
works.
am that person, but I do have a lot of flexibility in my
Right.
mornings.
So, in fact, what the survey showed after upon further investigation is that they were setting an alarm for literally 5:15, 5:30, 5:45. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, so can we just decide on one time and you just get up at that time? They're like, yeah, I'm usually up by the 5:45. I'm like, then can you just wake up at 5:45? Like, just change it to 5:45 and stop lying to yourself. Like,
Yeah.
just
And
stop.
like in that specific situation, you'll probably feel better because you're actually sleeping until 5:45 and not waking up,
Yeah.
falling a little asleep, waking up, falling a little asleep.
Yeah.
Speaking from experience here.
Yeah, like the damage that you're doing to your actual like um circadian rhythm is not the word. I don't know. But
Yeah.
the negative effects of getting up or leaning over or whatever to turn off an alarm every 10 minutes, like that is anything, most things that resemble what torture techniques are at times of war are
Uh-huh.
probably not things that you should do to yourself. For example, for example, sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
So if one of the torture techniques, and I remember coming across something, I listen to so much stuff and read so much stuff. So I
Yeah.
came across something where they had talked about particular torture techniques, like they would let a prisoner get to like start kind of
Oh
lulling to
no.
sleep, and they could tell like right when they were about to really get comfortable,
Yeah.
they'd like wake them up
Oh my God.
and just jack with them the whole time,
Yeah.
right? And I remember thinking to myself, that is literally what I do if I have a snooze button.
Yeah.
So that has become a rule of thumb. If you hear about it as a generally accepted or executed technique for prisoners, I would not recommend doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
Decent rule of thumb. I'm just going to throw that out there. So Kelly, I expect changes. Yeah.
I have been doing better. I have a two
Yeah.
snooze rule with myself.
Okay, we're not gonna
We're
we're
not gonna
not
go
gonna
there.
get into that right now.
Um,
Yeah. So, anyways, though, that at that time, though, people, that was one of the more popular posts, and I say more popular because I actually have people who like DM'd me on the backside who were
yeah.
like, "Oh, that really hit home," like that sort of a thing, and that might be around the time where I started selectively asking a follow-up question. With okay, so what are
Mm,
you going to do about that now? And I rarely get responses when I do that. I post about that too. Rarely get
yeah. No one
responses.
really wants to respond to you on any platform, is what I'm learning.
Yeah, not not much. That's okay. That's okay. Well, let's see. You want to use one of the scenarios? We'll just use one scenario and then kind of start wrapping
Well,
this.
I
Which
got
one?
two responses I want to talk about.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. That would
Oh.
probably be a good idea. Go ahead.
Um, so I got two responses. They're both my athletes, which makes a lot of sense to me now. But they
Okay.
both separately said that like they don't want a tough love coach because they personally give themselves enough tough love. So on the
Mm,
coaching side, they need a more supportive, gentler environment. But then based on like everything we said today, that is not to say I don't give them tough love. It's just not tough love in the like you're not doing enough, you're skipping workouts kind of thing. Although with those two, I haven't really had to give them too much tough love. They're with a certain kind of athlete, the ones that like I feel like athletes who don't like tough love are the athletes that have trouble getting themselves to stick to a routine, get into a habit, execute training plans. Because their assumption is tough love is like someone yelling at me for not doing these things.
some
And like I
people
don't
really
have,
like that.
huh?
Some people really like that,
Some people do. Yeah. I would say
but
the
they don't actually
people,
like to do anything about it.
yeah,
They just want to be yelled at.
that's another another topic for another day.
I think that's
Uh,
actually like a fetish in some worlds. Like they just want to be yelled at,
yeah.
like just shamed
Uh,
for no
yeah.
reason. Like that's interesting, but
Yeah.
okay.
But anyway, I thought those responses were interesting because it makes sense, especially I know both of these individuals, like growing up playing sports and stuff, have had tough love coaches.
Hmm.
And they are both women. So I think there is, I don't think gender plays a huge role, but I think it is a contributing factor to leaning towards tough love or not. Um, and that is, we don't have to get into this. That's why when Ty responded to you, I said that's a very male response of you.
Yeah, it's interesting that you do bring up gender because I have gotten feedback from um, women that I know that they specifically want to work with male coaches because they feel like male coaches, from their perspective, I have not said this to be
Yeah.
abundantly clear. Swing back to the JD Vance reference. I have not said this myself. I've been given the feedback that some women feel like men are better at the tough love approach.
Hmm.
They're less empathetic and less willing to let them get away with things. So
Yeah.
I was like, all right, yeah, I don't know. I do like the point that you bring up because it's a relatable one in terms of um, getting that feedback around like I'm already hard enough on myself.
Yeah.
Um,
It's usually type
I
A
recent
people too.
Yeah, yeah. Now I got that feedback from a client recently who I have a client who referred like a friend of hers.
Hmm.
And so I reached out to my initial client and just asked, like, can I'm definitely looking for some feedback on why you felt comfortable referring, like in that, in a way
Hmm.
of like, can you just help me know, like, what were your selling points? Like, what did you,
Yeah.
because I'm just curious, because I can make my assumptions like, oh, she likes the workouts, she likes the coaching, that sort of thing. I was like, no, you guys are like friends. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming at some point, it was like, well, yeah, this guy, blah, 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 blah. I was like, so I'm the fly on the wall. What am I hearing? And one of the things that she talked about, which is different, I believe somewhat different than when we first started, but she was like, yeah, I'm already hard enough on myself. And I know that you're going to have an empathetic approach.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh, okay. And also, we have definitely, so to your point, same thing as when you were talking about with your athletes, we have definitely had conversations, though, where I've pointed out some areas where this particular client was lacking some consistency in certain areas.
Hmm.
And also, as part of that conversation, we were sussing out why was the inconsistency happening? Like what were the events that they were processing and then making decisions that were leading to the inconsistency in that area, like what was kind of going on. And then but to me that I think those are the two things that are the overriding like summary for me with this particular topic is one, tough love starts from a place of actually caring about someone
Hmm.
or something, like one of
Yeah.
those two things, because I don't think you automatically have like I don't necessarily already have the automatically have this super tight connection with a client right off the bat.
Yeah.
I connect to what they want to accomplish. I connect to their story.
Hmm.
So that particular piece of it, I think the connection between the coach and the client develops as you go. And then the second piece would be a tough love coach. Like if you're describing yourself as a tough love coach, then and you have scenarios where you think tough love is calling it out and then you hang up the phone and you're like, you don't stick with them through that,
Yeah.
then that's not actually tough love coaching. Like that's just what you said. That's the internet. That you're basically being a troll. Like maybe
Yeah.
maybe your observation was accurate and you're doing nothing to actually work through the process itself. I think you're so spot on for identifying that being like exactly what it is. It's like, oh, well, thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
And now, you know,
Yeah.
I
I
like that.
think the summary for me is that I don't think it's either tough love or empathy. And I think the good way to utilize tough love, or I guess the effectiveness of tough love, is how you approach using tough love, whether you use it, like you were just saying, with a lack of emotion, lack of caring, a lack of like follow up. Whereas, like with the athletes I was talking about, with the athlete you were talking about, we use tough love with them, but we approach it with empathy from a place of like curiosity. How can I help? What is the root cause here? Do we need to make changes? Do we need to change your goal? Like, what do we need to do? And that it's a softer approach to tough love, but it's still tough love.
Yeah. Yeah. I would, yeah, I would even venture to say if you as a coach, well, this would totally be like an engagement bait post. If
you
you as a
should put it
coach,
on threads.
if you're a tough love coach who's not uncomfortable with some of those tough love conversations, you may not actually be tough love coaching. Like you're stepping away during the, like, because
Yeah.
it's going to probably force you into like some parts that you're not necessarily all like, that doesn't get like everything doesn't give you the warm and fuzzies
Yeah.
during that conversation either. I think it's just where I see the opposite of it is when a coach describes themselves as somebody who has a kinder, gentler approach, they often are taking on, so they're more sympathetic. They're taking
Mm,
on the like those feelings of anxiety and all these different, they're taking on all of the emotions as opposed to being transparent with the client about what they see. So it's like they're tap dancing around, like putting band-aid on after band-aid.
yeah.
Like go back to the scenario that I'm talking about. Like I could be like, hey, I'm just a little concerned about the amount of volume that you're adding to that training. I don't really see that as necessary. I could send them a couple of studies that talk about, the appropriate amount of volume. I could, point out like, oh, it just kind of seems like maybe you could sleep a little bit more, like that sort of thing. It's not very like direct, and
Hmm.
it's like tap dancing around the thing, so not seeing that particular link. Because if you're, and I guess you can kind of tell where I lean a little bit more towards, because I believe if you're talking about like sparing the person's feelings, then who's taking those feelings on? That means you're taking it on from
Mm,
where I sit.
yeah.
So you have now added that, and then that gets into a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Because I'll have I've mentored a few coaches, and a few of the ones that I've mentored who describe themselves as more of like the kinder, gentler approach, that sort of a thing. They often the emotional side of coaching is bleeding into their personal life.
I can
So
see that.
that's the person who like also has difficulty with like shutting their phone off at 9 p.m.
Mm,
They feel like they constantly like, oh, they got a notification that so and so like, updated this or whatever, so they'll check it at midnight. They feel like they've got to immediately they let stuff bleed in to their
yeah.
personal life on the regular. I'm not
Hmm.
saying never, but on the regular, and that's a whole different. I'm like, well, where's that kinder, gentler approach getting your life?
Mm,
So those feelings have to go somewhere, right?
yeah.
So I don't know. All
Yeah.
right.
I would. Never mind. I was going to say I would go so far to say that all effective coaches are tough love coaches. Because if you're avoiding the hard conversations, how can you be an effective coach? But I do know there are certain athletes
Hmm.
who are not looking to confront those tough situations. So maybe you do need to be more of an accountability partner and cheerleader. But I think for the vast majority of like athletes who have big goals, seek out a coach and put in
Yeah.
that effort. If you're not a tough love coach, then you're not doing your service to them to your full ability.
Yeah. As you mentioned that, I think that a factor that can make that plays a huge role is if you're talking about something that's very event driven.
Mm,
Like, I was giving the example of, say, the goal is to hit a 500-pound deadlift. That's different than if we're training for a powerlifting meet, if we're training for a competition, if we're
mm,
training for something that is event driven. The Olympics is really front of mind right
yeah.
now. So, the suck it up, like the work needs to be done sort of a thing, like deal with your feelings later. We have a goal, a target that needs to be hit. You'll deal with your feelings later sort of thing. That, I mean, I can see scenarios where that is the right approach because that person is there to get you to that finish line. Like you have a very defined finish line.
Hmm.
They're in place to get you there. That just, that's just not a arena that I work in.
Yeah.
Like we make up our deadlines for the most part. We make up our deadlines. So our deadlines would be more like milestones.
Yeah.
Like I'm going on vacation in 4 months. I'm going to do a photo shoot in X amount of months, like that sort of thing. I'm going to run this race or, that sort of thing. We will usually give ourselves the milestones and
Hmm.
the timelines versus like somebody else has given it to us. I think if somebody else has given it to you, sometimes that is what it is. I feel like that would be more your bag
Yeah, it definitely is more
sometimes.
in the running realm. Because even though we choose our deadlines, it's still like it's on the calendar. It's not moving unless you choose to like defer a year or choose a different race. But
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah.
okay, anything else? Because we got to wrap up.
Uh, yeah, I know. Yeah, we rolled on this one.
We attempted to
Yeah.
do an hour and we really failed.
Yeah.
This was a good topic, though.
Maybe we need a tough love podcast coach.
A tough love podcast coach would tell us, why do you two keep telling yourself you're going to keep it to an hour when you have literally never done that? Just accept that you're going to go for 90 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there we go. All
Um,
right. All right. You want to give the rundown on all those good things?
yeah, if you don't already, follow us on Instagram at Lifting Running Living Pod. You can also email us at liftingrunnинglivingpod@gmail.com. And new on Spotify, you can comment on specific episodes. And it's not like it was before, like answering a question. What did you think about this? You can literally just write a comment, which I hope that people start using it more because I personally, I haven't used it because I don't listen on Spotify. And Apple, you can't do it. But I do feel like when I'm listening to podcasts on Apple, I'll have thoughts about a certain podcast episode, but I don't want to
Mm,
write a whole review like about that episode. Like I feel like the review in my mind is about the podcast as a whole. But the Spotify comments, I think are really good for like, if you have something you want to tell us about how you interpret tough love, those comments are a great area because it pertains specifically to this episode.
yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And with that, that is going to wrap up episode number 31
Yeah.
of the pod. So thank you as always for listening. We appreciate it. Take care, and we'll talk to you next time.
Goodbye.